Have you ever found yourself searching for information online only to click on what seemed like a helpful resource and discover it's locked behind a form? Maybe that moment of hesitation as you decide whether the content is worth giving up your email address or personal information. Now, flip the perspective. Have you ever created valuable content that could help many people, only to be told you need to put it behind a form to capture leads? That uncomfortable feeling of restricting access to something you genuinely want to share widely. This tension reveals a fundamental misalignment at the heart of modern content creation. We've taken industrial age thinking about scarcity and transactions and applied it to knowledge, something that naturally wants to flow freely and multiply through sharing. When we treat content primarily as a lead generation asset, we create artificial barriers to natural knowledge flow. We force a transaction at precisely the moment when trust is most fragile. And perhaps most troubling, we transform what could be a generous act of sharing into an extractive exchange. This is the lead magnet trap, when artificial scarcity fights against natural knowledge flow. It begins innocently enough. Organizations discover they can offer valuable information in exchange for contact details. Early results seem promising. Forms get completed, databases grow, and marketing teams celebrate their lead generation success. But over time, the costs multiply in ways that often remain hidden. Content creators find themselves torn between their natural desire to share valuable insights and organizational pressure to capture data. They begin optimizing for conversion rather than maximum value creation. The very people they hope to help become increasingly wary, developing what we might call form fatigue, that instinctive resistance to yet another data collection point. But there's another way to approach content and knowledge, one that aligns with how value naturally wants to flow. The value first content approach recognizes that knowledge isn't diminished when shared, it multiplies. It understands that genuine expertise demonstrated freely builds more trust than expertise held hostage behind forms. Most importantly, it acknowledges that relationships form most naturally when they begin with genuine value exchange rather than forced transactions. Today, we'll explore this transformation in depth, from the origins of the lead magnet trap to its mounting costs in our digital world. We'll examine how it creates friction not just in marketing, but throughout organizations, fragmenting knowledge and eroding trust. More importantly, we'll introduce the Value-First Content Manifesto, a fundamentally different approach to making value tangible, shareable, and multipliable. We'll provide clear principles for capturing knowledge as it emerges, enabling natural sharing and creating connection points that multiply impact. Whether you're a content creator frustrated by artificial barriers to sharing your best work, a marketing leader seeking more authentic connection, or an executive wondering why your content investments aren't building the relationships you expected, this session will illuminate a path forward that aligns with how value naturally wants to flow. Welcome, everyone, to day 4 of our Value First Framework series. I'm Chris Carolan, and as your Pathfinder, I am so excited to talk about today's topic and continue our journey exploring how industrial age thinking creates mounting friction in our digital world, and how the value first approach offers a transformative alternative. Now, this is where we're at in the schedule. And as you can see from our roadmap, we're making some great progress through our 10-part exploration. Yesterday, or last week, rather, we explored advertising trap and the Value-First Communication Manifesto, talking about the shift from interruption to enablement in how we communicate. So naturally today, we're talking about lead magnet and value-first content, looking at how we can transform the content from transaction to genuine contribution. And tomorrow we'll go into the qualification trap and the value first partner manifesto, building partnerships that multiply value rather than merely exchange it or even extract it, maybe, is a better way to say that. Uh, and notice the sequence here, right? We know we need to get leads. So we go advertise some stuff, realize advertising isn't hitting the way we want it to. So we create some great content to try and transact those leads. It gets a bunch of leads, and then we've got to qualify them all. So just think about how this builds on itself in usually this order. So really excited to get uh, get started on today's the meat of this trap today. Where did it come from and the evolution? So it emerged from applying industrial age thinking about scarcity and transaction to knowledge and content. What began as a practical marketing innovation, offering valuable information in exchange for contact details, has evolved into an elaborate system that often prevents rather than enables natural knowledge sharing and value creation. This trap deepened as digital marketing matured. Organizations learned they could gate valuable content behind forms, creating artificial scarcity for information that could otherwise flow freely. Early successes with this approach led to increasingly sophisticated segmentation, nurturing, and scoring systems. Sorry, Casey. Built around the fundamental premise that knowledge should be controlled and metered rather than shared openly. The content marketing revolution initially promised to create valuable resources for audiences. Instead, it often created a transactional mindset where content's primary purpose became and still is seen as lead generation rather than knowledge sharing. The result is an ecosystem where even genuinely helpful information becomes wrapped in extractive mechanisms that create friction for both creators and audiences. Now, consider Sarah, a marketing director at a software company. She spent weeks developing an in depth guide that could genuinely help hundreds of companies improve their processes. She knows this content would build tremendous goodwill and showcase her company's expertise. But her lead generation targets loom large. Against her better judgment, she gates the guide behind a form, knowing that for every person who completes it, 3 to 5 others will bounce away, never experiencing the value her company could have provided. Or think about Michael searching for solutions to a pressing business problem. He finds what looks like the perfect resource, only to encounter a form demanding not just his email, but his company size, budget, and timeline. In that moment, his perception shifts from this company wants to help me to this company is trying to qualify me as a sales opportunity. He leaves the problem unsolved and the relationship opportunity lost. Now, as content volume increases and trust decreases, the costs of gated content multiply. We see rising audience resistance as people become increasingly reluctant to exchange personal information for content. This manifests as higher bounce rates, growing use of disposable email addresses, and general skepticism toward content effort offers. We see growing content production costs as organizations must create increasingly sophisticated assets to overcome this resistance. What might have worked as a simple PDF now requires interactive tools, videos, or elaborate assessments to justify the data exchange. We've experienced expanding friction in the customer journey as artificial gates interrupt natural exploration and discovery. Instead of flowing naturally from awareness to consideration, potential customers face jarring transaction points that break momentum and erode trust. Finally, we see mounting frustration from genuine experts whose knowledge gets trapped in lead generation systems. Subject matter experts who want to share valuable insights find their contributions hidden behind forms that limit their impact and recognition. And let me tell you, folks, there is nothing worse than getting the buy in from an industry thought leader that is on your team, a subject matter expert, and then not being able to execute proper distribution and then never getting their help again. Think about that. So, those are obvious costs, right? What are the hidden costs that we're seeing trouble, especially leadership teams understanding? Beyond the visible marketing challenges, organizations suffer deeper costs. Trust erosion. When the exchange feels imbalanced or manipulative, when valuable information is clearly being withheld solely to collect data, it creates a transactional rather than trusted advisor relationship from the very first interaction. Relationship contamination when connections begin with a transactional interaction. Starting relationships with "give me your information to get this value" establishes an extractive pattern that's difficult to transform into genuine partnership later. We see knowledge fragmentation when valuable information gets divided to create multiple lead capture opportunities. Instead of comprehensive resources that provide complete understanding, organizations deliberately break knowledge into pieces to generate more form completions and hit those KPIs. We also see market education limitation. When crucial insights remain inaccessible to many who could benefit, information that could elevate entire markets or industries remains trapped behind gates, limiting collective advancement and innovation diffusion. Hi, HubSpot ecosystem with your massive knowledge gaps. Could this be the cause? What are some false solutions that we see? Organizations typically respond to diminishing returns from gated content, not by questioning the fundamental approach, but by adding new layers of sophistication. More enticing lead magnets that promise greater value to overcome growing resistance. This addresses the symptom, declining conversion rates, rather than the cause, misalignment with natural value flow. We see progressive profiling that collects data in smaller increments over time. While less intrusive than long forms, this approach still maintains the fundamental transactional model rather than enabling natural relationship development. We see partial gating strategies that show portions of content while hiding the most valuable elements. This creates a teaser experience that often feels even more manipulative than complete gating. We see improved form experiences with shorter fields, better mobile optimization, or clear value propositions. While reducing immediate friction, these approaches still maintain the fundamental misalignment between transactional data collection and natural relationship development. And we also see more sophisticated nurturing systems that attempt to build relationships after the initial transaction. These systems obviously try to overcome the trust deficit created by the initial gating, but often struggle against the transactional foundation already established. So just think, did this lead show up on their own accord, or did we trick them into doing so? And now they're in our system and they might love our product, but we still have to overcome this trust deficit. These approaches share a common flaw. They attempt to optimize the artificial constraints rather than questioning whether constraints belong at all. They focus on making the transaction more palatable rather than transforming it into authentic value exchange. So, what's the pattern? This trap demonstrates how transactional thinking creates mounting friction in knowledge sharing. It starts with the idea that knowledge should be exchanged for contact information, applying industrial age scarcity thinking to information that naturally multiplies through sharing. This creates artificial scarcity for information that could flow freely, building barriers to natural knowledge sharing and relationship development. Now, organizations have to build complex systems to optimize this extraction process, developing even more sophisticated ways to collect, process, and act on contact data rather than focusing on value creation. Now, content creators optimize for conversion rather than maximum value, subtly shifting their focus, sometimes not so subtly, from genuine service to data collection efficiency. Now we have an entire ecosystem that becomes increasingly transactional and trust eroding, with audiences growing more resistant and organizations responding with more aggressive content traps. Man, if you're in the HubSpot ecosystem and this does not resonate with you, like please send me a message. Be very interested to understand why. Um, let's talk about an alternative though. Let's pick up the pace here. The Value First Content Manifesto is founded on fundamental truths about how knowledge naturally wants to flow. And if you can think about this through the lens of word of mouth marketing, right? I use a lot of new terminology here, but at the end of the day, everybody knows word of mouth marketing, the best kind, the best qualified opportunities come in the door, the easiest wins. It's what we're enabling here, right? So, fundamental truths knowledge multiplies through sharing rather than diminishing. Unlike physical resources, information creates more value the more widely it's distributed. When we share knowledge freely, we don't lose value. We create the conditions for its multiplication. Authentic expertise demonstrated builds more trust than expertise claimed. Freely sharing valuable insights creates more credibility than making statements about expertise while withholding the evidence behind forms or behind discovery calls or behind demos. Relationships develop naturally through recognized value, not forced transactions. Real connections form when people experience genuine value and choose to engage further, not when they are required to exchange personal information for access. Content exists to make value tangible, shareable, and multipliable. The primary purpose of content isn't lead generation, but value demonstration, creating tangible expressions of expertise and insight that can be easily shared and built upon. So let's get into the Value First Content Manifesto. 10 core principles that transform how we approach content creation and sharing. Number one, we will capture knowledge as it emerges, not just plan its creation. We recognize that in a world that's moving unbelievably fast, valuable insights appear naturally through the work. We will build systems to capture and share these organic discoveries rather than relying solely on predetermined production calendars and artificial deadlines. Number two, we will enable natural sharing, not control distribution. We understand that knowledge multiplies through free movement. We will create environments where valuable content flows naturally to where it creates impact rather than restricting access through unnecessary gates and approval processes. Number three, we will focus on enabling understanding, not just providing information. We believe transformation requires genuine comprehension. We will craft content that builds deep understanding rather than simply transferring data or following prescribed formats. Number four, we will create connection points, not content silos. We recognize that value compounds when knowledge interconnects. We will develop content that naturally links related ideas rather than producing isolated assets that fragment understanding. Number five, we will design for natural discovery, not just searchability. We understand that people find what they need through multiple pathways. We will create content ecosystems that support serendipitous exploration rather than relying solely on precise search queries and rigid taxonomies. We will cultivate, number six, we will cultivate living knowledge, not static documentation. We believe understanding evolves constantly. We will build systems where content naturally grows and adapts with new insights rather than creating fixed documents that quickly become outdated, or fixed HubSpot tutorials for that matter that quickly become outdated. Number seven, we will amplify diverse voices, not just official narratives. We recognize that valuable knowledge emerges from many sources. We will create platforms where multiple perspectives can contribute and connect rather than limiting content to authorized creators and formal channels. Number eight, we will embrace authentic expression, not just polished presentation. We understand that genuine connection often comes through natural human voice. We will value authenticity and clarity over perfect formatting and corporate language that distances rather than connects. Number nine, we will measure by impact created, not just consumption metrics. We believe content exists to enable transformation. We will evaluate effectiveness by the value it helps create rather than by views, downloads, or completion rates alone. Number 10, we will remove barriers to contribution, not just enable consumption. We recognize that everyone has valuable knowledge to share. We will build systems where people can easily transform their insights into shareable value rather than creating separate classes of content creators and consumers. Powerful stuff. Now, what does this do to the value path and how we support it? This approach transforms how content supports natural progression through all 8 stages of the value path. For our audience, they're saying, I am learning. Without artificial gates, people in their earliest moments of possibility recognition can freely explore and build initial awareness. Content designed for maximum sharing reaches more people in this stage, creating wider top of funnel discovery without forced progression. For our researchers, who are obviously saying, I am researching. As people move into purposeful investigation, freely available content enables deeper exploration and systematic learning. They can follow their natural curiosity, aka binge, without being forced into premature data exchange, building stronger understanding before considering connection. For hand raisers, they're saying, I'm buying. I'm in buy mode. Somebody can please help me. When people have developed enough confidence to seek expert guidance, they reach out based on recognized value rather than form completion. This creates higher quality initial connections grounded in genuine interest rather than data extraction. And for our heroes, our highly empowered revenue opportunities, they're saying, I'm considering options. During serious evaluation, open content provides the comprehensive understanding needed for authentic conviction. Decision makers can involve their teams without sharing login credentials or going through multiple form completions, enabling natural team alignment. By the way, authentic conviction, the opposite of we have a deal at the end of the month, so I want to create urgency for you to buy now. After they buy, got value creators on the other side. They're saying, I must create value for the organization. As organizations begin implementation, freely accessible content supports successful activation. Teams can easily share resources across departments without access barriers, enabling coordinated value creation. Our adopters, the next stage, say, I realize your value. As teams experience tangible value realization, open content enables deeper optimization and capability development. Resources can be easily shared with new team members or adjacent departments, expanding adoption naturally. At that point, they're loving they're loving your product, they're loving your experience. They want to advocate internally, and they say, "I tell others about you." When people begin naturally sharing their success stories, openly available content makes it easy for them to include specific resources that help them. This amplifies their advocacy with tangible evidence rather than sending others to hit the same gates they encountered. So at the end of the day, they're not going to send them to those gates. And lastly, we've got champions that they say, I am a raving fan. As organizations move to actively building communities of practice, open content provides the foundation for shared understanding. Community leaders can freely reference and build upon key resources, multiplying impact through natural knowledge flow. The result is a content ecosystem that enables natural movement through every stage of value creation, recognition, and multiplication without the artificial friction created by transaction-based approaches. So, what does a practical transformation look like? How can you identify the lead magnet trap in your own organization? Look for these telltale signs. Are content decisions driven by form strategy? When conversations about new content begin with, how will we gate this? Rather than how will this create value, you're likely caught in the trap. When success is measured primarily by form completions, if your content metrics focus more on how many people filled out forms than on the actual impact or value created, the trap is active. When valuable information gets deliberately broken into pieces to create multiple form completion opportunities, you're seeing the trap in action. For user experience designed for data extraction, look at how your content platforms are structured. Do they prioritize easy access and natural exploration, or are they built around conversion points and data collection? Listen to your subject matter experts and content creators. Are they expressing concern about artificial limits on the reach and impact of their knowledge? You're in the trap. So, some first steps that you can take to begin the transformation from gated content to natural value flow. Number one, conduct a content gate audit. Inventory all your currently gated content assets. Note the initial reason for gating each piece. Assess the current conversion rate and trend over time. Evaluate the actual business value generated from each gate. And identify low performing gates that could be initial candidates for removal. Number two, run an ungating experiment. Select 2 to 3 valuable but underperforming gated assets. Remove the forms and make them freely available. Monitor impacts on reach, engagement, natural next steps, and sharing. And then document both quantitative results and qualitative insights. You got to lean into qualitative insights if you're going to go this route. LinkedIn messages, LinkedIn DMs, Slack DMs, like all these verbal word of mouth type stuff online or in person when you go to events. You got to document that stuff. Number three, develop natural connection points. For ungated content, create clear but non-intrusive pathways for accessing related content, subscribing to ongoing value, requesting direct conversation, and joining relevant communities. Ensure these options feel like natural next steps rather than interruptions. Number four, reimagine your value metrics. Got a whole trap and manifesto designed for measurement towards the end of the series. Number 8. So shift the focus from form completions to indicators of genuine value, such as content application. How are people using what they learn? Knowledge sharing. How value spreads. Are they tagging and sharing on LinkedIn? Relationship depth. Meaningful interactions beyond initial engagement. Impact stories. Tangible transformations enabled by your content. Number 5, release a signature open resource. Identify one high value content asset that represents your best thinking. Make it completely open and easily shareable. Promote it as widely as possible. Track its impact beyond what would have been possible with a gate. And use this as a clear demonstration of the alternative approach. Inevitably, these traditional the change to this traditional approach is going to encounter some obstacles. These are some common ones. Concern about lead generation impact. When stakeholders worry about losing leads, focus on relationship quality, not just quantity. Show how natural connection points create higher quality engagements and implement progressive transition rather than abrupt change. About resistance from stakeholders accustomed to form metrics. Introduce complementary metrics that show relationship development. Run controlled experiments with clear success criteria. And share case studies from other organizations that have made the shift. Maybe you'll see some uncertainty about how to measure value without forms. Develop clear value-focused metrics that track engagement depth and progression. Create feedback mechanisms that capture qualitative impact alongside quantitative measurement. Don't overthink it. Just be present on LinkedIn, and qualitative engagement happens when you're sharing valuable content. Lastly, the fear that giving away expertise diminishes value perception. How many of you have heard, like, well, if we give it away for free, then it has no value? Demonstrate how openly shared expertise creates more credibility than claimed expertise. Highlight the difference between information and transformation, showing how open sharing creates demand for deeper engagement. One of my biggest learnings from the Ask You Answer in 2017, just because you tell somebody how to do something doesn't mean they have the bandwidth or know how to do it themselves. And if you can prove that you're the one that knows how, they will come to you. For every one that does it themselves, there's 9 more willing to come to you versus 10 that'll never know. Success indicators. How will you know if your transformation from gated content to natural value flow is succeeding? Look for these indicators. Natural relationship development. People reach out through non-form channels at increasing rates. Hello, social media. Hello, Slack communities. Conversations begin with reference to specific value received. Relationship quality and depth increase even as traditional lead counts change. Sales conversations start from a foundation of recognized value rather than qualification. You'll see content impact multiplication. Reach extends significantly beyond what gated versions achieved. Social sharing and recommendations increase. Organic discovery improves as content circulates more widely. Ideas and insights get incorporated into others' thinking and work. Lastly, you'll see market positioning enhancement as your perceived expertise and authority strengthen. Your competitive differentiation becomes more clear and compelling, and industry conversation increasingly references your perspectives. Pretty sure leadership teams everywhere want that. They just don't know how to get it. As we close, the transformation from lead magnets to value first content isn't just about marketing tactics. It's about fundamental alignment between how we share knowledge and how value naturally wants to flow. When we remove artificial constraints and allow knowledge to flow freely, we don't diminish its value, we multiply it. We create the conditions for authentic relationships based on demonstrated value rather than extracted data. And most importantly, we align our actions with our genuine desire to help and serve others. This approach transforms how content operates at every stage of the value path, from enabling friction-free exploration for those just beginning their journey to supporting comprehensive evaluation for those making crucial decisions to providing shareable resources for advocates. Value first content creates a natural, sustainable ecosystem that grows stronger over time. This isn't about abandoning business growth or relationship development. It's about achieving these goals in ways that work with natural human behavior rather than against it. The organizations that embrace this approach discover something surprising. They don't generate fewer opportunities, they create stronger ones with compounding value over time. So I encourage you to take at least one practical step from today's session. Conduct that content gate audit to identify where artificial barriers may be limiting your impact. Run a small ungating experiment to see the effect firsthand. Create those natural connection points, AKA engage in the community, that allow people to engage in their terms. Release that signature open resource that demonstrates your commitment to value. For those who want to reflect more deeply on today's topic, consider these questions. Where do you most clearly see the lead magnet trap operating in your own organization? Which content assets might create more value if freed from artificial constraints? What natural connection points could you create that would feel more aligned with how relationships actually develop? what might be possible if your best thinking could reach everyone who could benefit from it, not just those willing to complete a form. How might your relationship with your own expertise change if you focused on maximum impact rather than data collection? Tomorrow, we'll continue our journey by exploring the qualification trap and the value first partner manifesto, examining how we build partnerships that multiply value rather than merely exchange it. I hope you'll join us as we continue illuminating the paths that enable natural value flow in your organization. Thank you so much for being a part of this exploration. Please share your questions, insights, and experiences in the comments. And I look forward to continuing the conversation. We will see you tomorrow.